GLC brings a bit of Mercedes polish to the premium part of the mid-sized SUV segment, and this improved version of the first generation model is a significant step forward from the original. The whole of the mainstream engine range has been refettled, and infotainment media connectivity has taken an equally large step forward. Plus, efficiency, refinement and build quality represent other strong points. It's a very complete package.
In an era where 1 in every 3 Mercedes models sold is an SUV, this GLC is a crucial model for the brand. In mid-2019, 4 years into its production run, this mid-sized premium model was usefully updated to create the car that we're going to look at here. And what an important one it is. Outside of the company's front-driven compact models, hardly anything the brand makes now outsells the GLC, which makes it incredible that the segment it populates wasn't even competed in by the Stuttgart maker prior to this car's original launch in 2015. That's because its predecessor, the GLK, was never engineered for right-hand drive, and that's an oversight that must have cost Mercedes millions in lost sales. Still, the GLC has rapidly been making up this lost ground, helped by an ever-widening portfolio of variants, expanded first by coupe and Mercedes-AMG models. With this revised lineup, the range has been broadened further with mild hybrid technology, a plug-in variant, and for Europe at least, even a hydrogen-powered fuel cell version. Now, this was one of the first Mercedes cars launched with the brand's current naming convention. GL means this car is an SUV, while C refers to its size, this model being based on the same MRA platform as the 4th generation C-Class. Now, that chassis was designed from the outset to accommodate 4-wheel drive, which enables all GLC models to offer 4MATIC traction. Beyond those underpinnings, there's plenty else that's shared with the C-Class models that roll down the same German production line in Bremen, which is why the GLC benefits from much the same kind of update package, which was visited on the 4th generation version of that car in 2018. So there's a smarter LED headlamp and grille combo, and inside, infotainment has been updated with the latest MBUX media system. Semi-autonomous driving tech makes an appearance too. There is now the option of a fully digitalized instrument cluster, and as before, buyers also get the chance to add in sophisticated air suspension. More important than all that, though, is that the volume 220D diesel variant that almost all GLC buyers choose gets a completely fresh 2-litre OM654 series engine that offers vast improvements in refinement, efficiency and technology. In short, the GLC is now much better equipped to take on key direct rivals that have been launched since this design's original introduction. Cars like the 3rd generation BMW X3, the 2nd generation Volvo XC60 and Alfa Romeo Stelvio, as well as improved versions of established rivals like the Audi Q5 and the Jaguar F-Pace. Sounds promising, so time to check this Mercedes out. What are your expectations in terms of driving a premium mid-sized luxury SUV? A reasonably commanding and luxurious seating position, plenty of pulling power, impressive refinement. Well, the GLC delivers all these things. And handling, well, manage those expectations here. Despite copious use of aluminium in this car's body structure, a GLC can be up to 250 kilos heavier than the C-Class estate it's based on. And if you were going to drive those two cars back to back, you'd certainly feel the difference. Of course, that's something that very few potential buyers will do. All you really need to know here is that a GLC matches the current dynamic standard in the premium SUV class. It's no better and it's no worse. When this car was originally launched in our market in 2015, the fanfare accompanying its arrival as the brand's first offering in this segment sought to distract us from the fact, the rather awkward fact, that the mainstream engines were distinctly elderly in provenance. It was all very well for Mercedes to talk about aluminium architecture, driving mode systems and airmatic suspension, but the uncomfortable truth was that the powertrain and transmission combo that was being used was one developed the best part of a decade earlier. Being C-Class based, the GLC had to wait until that car's engineering was updated before its mainstream power plants could be upgraded to better meet the refinement and efficiency class standard. As part of the changes made to this revised first generation model, they have been, and the result is significant. In its improved form, this car may not look very much different, but there's no doubt that it's been rejuvenated beneath the bonnet. To suit the current enviro zeitgeist, there's now mild hybrid and plug-in hybrid petrol power. We'll get to that in a moment. For Europe, there's even these days a hydrogen fuel cell version, and minor dynamic updates have been made to the barnstorming V6 and V8 Mercedes-AMG petrol performance models that sit right at the top of the range. But by far the most important news relates to the volume diesel variants that most GLC buyers choose. These at last ditch the original model's rumbly 2.1 litre diesel in favour of the brand's far cleaner and more sophisticated modern era 2 litre OM654 series unit. We're trying it here in the 194 HP 220D form that most will want, a package that, as with all GLCs, includes 4MATIC on-demand four-wheel drive and a 9G-tronic plus 9-speed auto gearbox, which works with the usual Dynamic Select, Eco, Comfort and Sport driving modes that alter drive response, steering feel and ESP settings. There's also an extra Sport Plus mode, and as usual, there's an individual option which allows you to program in your preferred dynamic selections into a one-touch setting. In our market, Dynamic Select can't alter ride quality with steel sprung suspension. Now that might be an issue if, as is likely, you want one of the AMG line spec models, virtually all of which come non-negotiably with stiffer damping, which Mercedes standardises on the alternative coupe version of this car. Now, if you're happy with this more conventional SUV body style and you don't particularly like the sound of a firmish ride, it's worth knowing that for SUV range buyers, the GLC is available in the entry-level sport spec we're trying here, which has a different comfort-tuned suspension package, which, aided by slightly smaller 18-inch wheels, means that this car rides bumps and speed humps rather better. In fact, we think that this comfort spec damping package is bettered only by the most sophisticated ride system that Mercedes offers on this car, the air body control air suspension setup. Now, unless you have particularly deep pockets, your GLC won't come with that because it's limited to the priciest AMG line Ultimate trim level or the pricey petrol Mercedes AMG performance models, and it can't be added in further down the range as an option. But back to that 4-cylinder diesel power plant. It's probably the most refined unit of its kind that we've come across, and it always feels impressively smooth and free from vibration, and that's a vital consideration when you're looking for a car that will ease you along with the minimum of fuss. Even under firm acceleration, this engine remains calm, unruffled and reasonably rapid too. There's a lusty 400 Newton meters of torque, which helps propel this car to 62 in 7.9 seconds on the way to a top speed that's rated at 134 miles an hour. The alternative 300e model uses the same engine in an uprated 245 HP state of tune with 500 Nm of torque, and that's enough to improve those readings to 6.5 seconds and 144 mph, although the 2.5 ton brake towing capacity remains unchanged. If your annual mileage isn't vast though, it's well worth giving the brand's latest 2-litre EQ Boost mild hybrid petrol engine a look. At the time of this test, the brand told us that it wasn't going to offer this unit in our market in its most accessible GLC 200 197 HP form, which is a pity, but the alternative GLC 300 258 HP version of this unit that we can have could still make sense if you want an alternative to diesel and you can't afford the plug-in premium. This engine is boosted not only by a twin-scroll turbocharger, but also a 10 kilowatt slug of battery power under hard acceleration. Now this comes courtesy of this mild hybrid power plant's 48 volt electrical system, with the extra so-called EQ Boost punch designed to fill the hole in the torque curve you'd normally get before the turbos spool up. As a result, as promised, this really does feel like a larger capacity engine. You don't, of course, get anything like the pulling power that you would do in a GLC 200D, but there is a very respectable set of performance stats. 62 miles an hour from rest occupies 6.2 seconds on the way to 149 miles an hour. Of course, the primary purpose of the GLC 300 model's EQ boost technology is to improve efficiency at very low speeds or at a cruise. With this car in its eco-dynamic select mode, you'll be powered purely on electrical energy, although for very short periods. For longer durations of milk float mobility, which are able to make more of a difference to fuel and CO2 stats, you'll need deeper pockets for the pricey plug-in model we referenced earlier. This is badged the GLC 300E, and it mates a 2-litre petrol unit to a 90 kilowatt electric motor that, when fully charged, is able to achieve up to 27 miles of WLTP rated all-electric driving at speeds of up to 81 miles an hour. If overall efficiency isn't a priority though, the GLC 300E can also be a rapid thing, thanks to quite a prodigious total system output of 320 horsepower, and that's enough to dispatch 62 miles an hour from rest in 6.8 seconds on the way to 143 miles an hour. Of course, if you're really interested in performance, then nothing but the V6 and V8 engined full-fat Mercedes-AMG versions of this car will do. These feature only minor updates as part of this midterm facelift. There is now an extra drive mode function, for example, which is badged slippery. Of perhaps more importance, though, is the news that the GLC 43's 3-litre twin-turbo V6 now develops 390 horsepower, which is 23 horsepower more than before, meaning that 62 flashes by in just 4.9 seconds. The GLC 43 comes only with the usual 9G Tronic Plus auto transmission. In contrast though, the V8 GLC 63 has to be had with the uprated AMG Speedshift MCT version of that 9-speed box to cope with its greater output, 476 HP from the standard model or 510 HP from the uprated S version. These two V8 variants are concussively rapid. They respectively dispatch the 62 miles an hour sprint in either 4 seconds or 3.8 seconds on the way to a top speed that in a GLC 63S is 174 miles an hour. Updates made for 63 series buyers include extra AMG Dynamics driving settings and the introduction of a faster reacting electrically locking differential to replace the previous manual locking one. But high performance isn't our focus here, and it won't be for most GLC buyers. These people won't care much about off-road prowess either, although it is worth pointing out that unlike some class rivals, the GLC actually does have some. The 4MATIC four-wheel drive system this car uses is like virtually all all-wheel drive systems in this segment, in that it only engages the rear wheels when a lack of traction demands it. Mercedes claims to have made software tweaks to this revised model which improve the setup's calibration in different environments, but it is still very much orientated for tarmac use. Off-road progress would anyway be somewhat limited by this car's modest 181mm ride height. That 181mm figure is with conventional coil sprung suspension. Now, if you happen to have stretched up to the top AMG line Ultimate variant that we referenced earlier, and therefore you've got yourself air body control air suspension on this car, then you'll get a higher ride height, which you can then further raise by as much as 50mm to raise this Mercedes 245mm off the deck. And of course, that could make all the difference when it comes to sharp inclines and to gnarly forest tracks. In the absence of air body control, you'd be wise to limit your adventures in your GLC to light tracks and muddy car parks though. Even these will be foreign to most likely owners for whom tarmac territory is all that really matters. On a paved surface, this car aims to bring an S-Class limo-like demeanour to middle management buyers, and to a great extent, it still sets the current standard in the class when it comes to doing just that. Yes, we would like a little more steering feedback. The direct steer rack might be speed sensitive, but it still doesn't provide that. Nevertheless, you do quickly forget about that as the the 9-speed box slurs effortlessly through the ratios, and the world eases past your window in slow motion. With the optional driving assistance package, you can even introduce an element of autonomous driving, and that's courtesy of the Distronic Plus with steering assist and stop and go pilot feature, which works with an active lane keeping assist system and basically drives for you at a cruise. It's all very S-Class like, which is exactly what buyers of this car will be looking for. Subtle changes mark the revised version of this first generation GLC apart from the original. The fact that it's also available in a separate coupe body style relieves this standard SUV variant of the need to look too self-consciously sporty, but there is still just enough visual dynamism here to interest someone who might also be considering, say, an Evoque, an F-Pace or an Alfa Stelvio in this segment. Or at least there is if you trade up beyond this entry-level sports spec variant anyway. Up front, the look you get will depend to a great extent on the trim level you've selected. Now, this base sport version has this twin louvered grille and below it this skid plate style silver finishing around the lower air intake. Select instead one of the various AMG line versions or any of the mainstream coupe variants and you'll find the nose section quite different. These models get a studded diamond style single louvered grille which incorporates shiny chromed pins, while further down, in place of all this silver trim here, there's sportier treatment which sees large corner cutouts embellished on each side by twin black slats. Mercedes AMG models meanwhile feature a more overt grille with vertical silver slats. Anyway, whatever the frontal visage of your chosen GLC model is, it'll be subtly different with this revised car, which benefits from a bumper redesign and smarter, slimmer headlamps that now feature high-performance LED beams as standard. View the car in profile and the boxy silhouette of this SUV body style is of course quite different from that of the swept back coupe version. In both cases the changes made as part of the facelift updates are minimal. There's now a bit of extra chrome and some smarter wheel designs, but that's about it. The C-Class ancestry continues to be evident in the gentle sloping dropping line just below the door handles. That's a distinctive characteristic of that car. The rising lower crease also plays its part in giving the flanks some shape, and it connects wheel arches that feature matte black cladding and which can house rims varying from 18 to 22 inches in size. We've got the 18 inches here. Strong rear haunches, silver aluminium roof rails and standard rear privacy glass complete the effect. The broad, muscular shoulder line is carried through into the rear, where restyled LED split taillights now feature a more distinctive ring-style illuminated motif. As at the front, different styles of the revised bumper design are provided for different variants, all featuring silver-clad tailpipes. Now, if you're wondering why there's no roof antenna, it's because all the necessary technology for that has been built into the exterior mirrors and into this subtle roof spoiler. Just another example of Mercedes' attention to detail. More important than all of that, though, is what sits below this shapely bodywork, specifically a structure almost 50% of which is fashioned from aluminium. Now, we've already alluded to the fact that this GLC's basic design borrows heavily from the brand's more conventional lineup of C-Class models, but there's more to it than that. SUVs traditionally suffer as a result of their heavier weight, and that's an issue that Mercedes was absolutely determined to minimize here. Hence this GLC's complex hybrid mix of lightweight aluminium and high-strength steel, which does so much to facilitate the competitive efficiency figures that we'll talk about later in this film. Time to take a seat up front. Further signs of this car's C-Class heritage are evident once you take a seat behind the wheel, which means it's very nice indeed. The GLC's interior always was. It represented a big step forward from older generation models, which tended to feature cabins that were functional and of high quality, but which were about as stylish as Angela Merkel. With this revised car, though, nothing has changed with the essential dashboard architecture, but the ambiance is even nicer, especially if you progress further up the range and include freshly added embellishments like open-pored oak trim and the 64-colour ambient lighting system. All variants get this smarter, silver-trimmed, multifunction steering wheel here, which incorporates the tiny touch-sensitive pads, which will allow you to operate whichever infotainment screens have been fitted. Ah yes, infotainment, that's another key GLC update that we need to talk about. Now, because this is an update of an older design, it can't include the latest twin-bonded monitor widescreen cockpit system that features on the company's more recent models. Still, in compensation, the brand has standardised a 10.25-inch central touchscreen with wondrous new generation graphics, and that's right across the GLC range, and it replaces the old, less sophisticatedly configured, non-touchable 7 and 8.4-inch displays that we used before. It offers navigation, radio, phone, media, info, apps and store settings that you can flick between using this intuitive touchpad between the seats. Plus, this much more up-to-date media setup now hosts the Stuttgart brand's new generation MBUX. That's the Mercedes-Benz User Experience Multimedia Platform. Now, this is supposed to take in-car connectivity to a whole new level. And I suppose that's slightly undermined by the setup's failure to include standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. That really is something that your GLC won't include unless it happens to feature a smartphone integration package, and you can only have that on the very expensive variants. What you do get on every variant is standard Hey Mercedes voice activated functionality. The brand name designates the greeting that you'll have to address to the screen in order to get its incorporated MBUX speech recognition setup working. Now, as we have remarked when we were testing some of the company's other more recent models, this aspect of MBUX remains, in our view, something of a work in progress, but in our estimation it is vastly better than the other voice recognition setups which are currently on the market. Conventional voice control systems require certain specific voice commands from their users, but this setup's linguatronic natural speech recognition is really pretty good at understanding, well, almost anything that you ask of it. It is particularly good at things like finding new radio stations or telling you what the weather is at a programmed destination. Enough with media stuff. What else has been improved here? Well, with these sorts of cars, we rarely feel that enough time is spent on perfecting the seats, given the many hours that owners will be stuck in them. This one, though, is superbly supportive, and it's been further enhanced as part of this update package with electro-pneumatic four-way lumbar support and manual seat cushion depth adjustment, both features fitted as standard across the range. Now, you're not positioned especially loftily, given that this is supposed to be an SUV, but the placement will still seem quite commanding if, as is quite likely, you have graduated into this car from a C-Class. The layout of the dials you view ahead of you will depend on the level of specification you've chosen. This base sport variant sticks with conventional analog gauges separated by a 5.5-inch screen, all of it now seeming rather yesterday in feel with a car of this price. So further up the range, there's the option of a high-tech 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster to make this car feel just as sophisticated as the more modern designs that it competes against. What else? Well, we do have a few issues. Some of the fixtures and fittings aren't as classy to the touch as they look to the eye, particularly these rather plasticky air vents. The thick rear pillars and the relatively small rear screen can make it difficult to see over your shoulder, so it's fortunate that a rear view camera and all-round parking sensors are standard across the range, as is an auto parking system. There is a bit of a bulge down by the footwell which interferes a little with the positioning of your left foot, and as usual with mainstream Mercedes models, the auto transmission is operated by a rather cheap feeling direct select gear change stalk behind the wheel. As for cabin storage, well, there's pretty much everything you'd want. This beautifully damped cover at the base of the centre stack conceals twin cup holders, a stowage area, a USB port and an optional wireless phone charging mat. Further back there's this large twin lidded box between the seats which has an SD card slot and twin USB-C points. Plus there's a large glove box, there's an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, there are ticket clips on the sun visors here, there's a net in the front passenger footwell, and there are decently sized door pockets with separate moulded recesses for cups, cans and bottles. Time to take a seat in the back. Now, if you've been persuaded to buy one of these in preference to a C-Class estate, it's here that your decision is going to pay off. The GLC has 33mm more length in its wheelbase than one of those would offer, and nearly all of that has been used for the benefit of folk at the rear. As a result, there's certainly more room for legs and knees back here than you get in a C-Class, although that isn't enough to make this car feel any more spacious than its direct segment rivals. Now, the exterior dimensions of this car are almost identical to a BMW X3, but a GLC is fractionally smaller than an Audi Q5. Now, that gives that Ingolstadt product a few crucial millimetres of extra legroom over this Mercedes, but of more consequence is that the bench of that Audi can be specified to slide backwards and forwards, and that's functionality which just isn't possible on a GLC. The backrest doesn't recline either. At least headroom's reasonable though, although you will lose a few millimetres of that on a plusher variant which is fitted with a panoramic glass roof. Overall, we think that a couple of adults should be very comfortable back here, even if they're 6-footers. Try and fit 3 folk in here though, and things are far less pleasant, with issues likely to be created by this rather high central transmission tunnel and by the fact that the middle seat has a rather firm backrest. Provided practicalities, they include this central armrest here with its incorporated compartment and its twin pop-out cup holders. There are seat back pockets and there are coat hooks around the overhead reading lights. These twin round centre vents are smart, and they sit just above a pull-out compartment which has twin USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket. Let's finish by taking a look at luggage space, and that's accessed via the standard electrically operated Easy Pack tailgate. Now, Mercedes obviously benchmarked this car's arch rivals BMW's X3 and Audi's Q5 here because the load capacity on offer, 550 litres, matches that you get in those two cars exactly, which does mean it could be better. You'll certainly get more boot room in this segment from cars like the Jaguar F-Pace and the Land Rover Discovery Sport. 7 carry-on suitcases will fit, which might sound reasonable, but it's the same amount that you'd be able to cram into the compact Skoda Scala family hatch. For reference, the GLC Coupe has a 500-litre boot. If you go for a top GLC variant fitted with the brand's air body control air suspension system, then you'll get a self-leveling feature to help cope with heavy loads, plus the option to lower this boot floor and make life easier for your arthritic old Labrador. Even without that, this is a reasonably practical space. There's a retaining net in the left-hand cargo area sidewall, twin bag hooks, 4 tie-down points and a lockable boot floor so that valuables can be stored in the surprisingly spacious compartment underneath. Inevitably, this underfloor area is surprisingly spacious for a reason, namely that Mercedes declines to offer any kind of temporary spare wheel as standard on this car, and that's an oversight that we always disapprove of in SUVs that are in any way remotely capable on rougher terrain. The usual Mercedes fold-out shopping crate resides down here. That's an appendage that looks rather flimsy, but actually turns out to be surprisingly useful. Now, if you specified the retractable tow bar, the switch for it resides in the lip of the tailgate. Need more room? Well, thanks to the rear bench's 40-20-40 divisioning, long items like skis can easily be pushed through between rear-seated folk. For ultimate space, you activate these cargo sidewall mounted backrest buttons, which leave you with a virtually flat extended low bay, free of annoying steps and ridges. It's 1600 litres in size. Again, that's the same as an X3, but it's 50 litres more than a Q5 and significantly more than the kind of total capacity that you get in rivals like Volvo's XC60 and the Range Rover Evoque. GLC SUV sits primarily in the £40,000 to £55,000 bracket. That's the mainstream versions of this conventional model, which kicks off in this base sport guise and then graduates through AMG Line Premium, AMG Line Premium Plus and AMG Line Ultimate versions. If you don't mind forgoing base sport trim, your dealer will also offer you the alternative of a swept-back coupe version of this model, which is available at an extra cost over this standard design that's either just above or just below the £3,000 mark, depending on the engine that you're looking at. Ah yes, now engines, all of them come mated to 4MATIC 4-wheel drive and the upgraded 9G-tronic Plus 9-speed auto gearbox. The only power plant that's offered right across the range is the 2-litre mild hybrid petrol unit used in the GLC 300, which develops 258 HP. Most GLC customers though ignore that and choose the 194 horsepower 220D diesel variant we've got here. Further up the range, you'll be offered the chance to pay a £2,375 premium to get the quicker 300D derivative, which uses the same 2-litre engine and an uprated 245 HP state of tune. For one of those though, your price starting point is around £47,000, so it's easy to see why this 220D version is most people's preferred choice. Few people see this GLC as an enthusiast-orientated SUV, so it is a touch ironic that this car offers the segment's widest choice of high-performance derivatives. These Mercedes-AMG models, they start from the £50,000 price point. Now that gets you the 6-cylinder GLC 43 with 390 horsepower. But if you really want to burn some tiger tokens, you'll want the fire-breathing 8-cylinder GLC 63. That's offered either with 476 horsepower for around £75,000 or in top GLC 63S form with 510 HP for around £86,000. We'll give you some Mercedes range perspective on those figures before we move on. Some commentators like to suggest that a similarly engineered C-Class estate might actually be a more sensible choice for many GLC buyers, but they obviously haven't inspected the price lists, which reveal that one of those would save you almost nothing. And that's really why most will continue to prefer the extra versatility and also the trendier image of this GLC. Another more credible option might be the next model down in the brand's SUV lineup. That's the GLB. Now that sits on a supposedly more compact platform, but it's actually slightly bigger inside, enough in fact to offer the 7-seat option that you can't have in the GLC. But the only GLB variant that's really directly comparable to this GLC is the mid-range GLB 220D 4MATIC AMG Line Premium 5-seat derivative, which at the time of this test cost just over £42,000, so around £2,500 less than a comparable GLC. You're more likely, though, to want to know how the GLC's pricing stacks up against premium branded mid-sized SUVs from rival manufacturers. So let's see. Now we're going to use this 194 HP 220D 4MATIC diesel model as a comparison benchmark, since, as we said, that's the variant that almost all buyers of this Mercedes will be looking at. It isn't coincidental that the budget Mercedes requires for this derivative is almost exactly the same as you'll need for its two closest Teutonic competitors, Audi's Q5 40 TDI Quattro and the BMW X3 xDrive 20D. In all three cases, the ownership stats are very similar, so the final decision will really come down to personal preference. The German brands, though, are these days no longer having things all their own way in this segment. Volvo's second-generation XC60 offers an appealing alternative choice that will save you a fraction over a GLC. So will something like Alfa Romeo's Stelvio. In both cases, though, the cars in question struggle to match this Mercedes model's residual values, which could be crucial for business buyers. A better choice in that regard is Jaguar's F-Pace, which in 2-litre D 180 PS all-wheel drive auto guise is priced almost identically to a GLC 220D, although it is slightly less efficient to run. Plus, of course, there are a variety of Land Rover products, though none of them seem quite as precisely directed at this Mercedes as the F-Pace is. The model that you would have expected would have been groomed for this role, the Range Rover Velar, is certainly very appealing, but it costs over £5,000 more than this GLC in comparable D180 all-wheel drive form, and that's a big difference. Otherwise, if you want something with a Land Rover badge, you'll be looking at TD4 180 versions of the Discovery Sport or the Range Rover Evoque. With comparable S-Spec trim, both would cost around about the same as this base S-Spec GLC 220D, but we think neither quite matches the buying demographic of this Mercedes. The 7-seat Disco Sport is aimed at a slightly different kind of customer, while the Evoque is a fractionally smaller car that Mercedes would probably argue is better matched by upper spec versions of their GLA model. The same applies to the Lexus NX, although that is an interesting alternative if you prefer the idea of petrol-electric hybrid power to diesel. And the same sort of money would also buy you upper spec versions of more aspirational 7-seat mid-sized SUVs like the DS7 Crossback and the Volkswagen Tiguan Allspace. So let's move on to the top Mercedes-AMG versions of this car, which of course have their own distinct competitors. The 390 HP GLC 43 undercuts a 354 HP BMW X3 M40i by around £3,000 and a 362 HP Audi Q5 S-Line Competition 55 TFSIe by around £5,000, although that latter car has the advantage of plug-in hybrid technology. Move up a rung to the 476 HP GLC 63 model, and a check of the market will reveal that that car's main opposition lies either in the form of the Porsche Macan Turbo, which offers 434 HP and costs around £6,000 less, or the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio, which offers 510 HP and costs around £4,000 less. But both those cars use 6-cylinder engines which can't quite match the orchestral fireworks of the Merc's rather more charismatic 4-litre V8. The top 510 HP GLC 63S also contends with a couple of rivals, both of which use the JLR conglomerate's 5-litre supercharged V8. Around about the same amount as you'd have to pay for the 63S will get you a Range Rover Velar P550, or for around about £10,000 less there is the fractionally smaller Jaguar F-Pace SVR. Back though to real-world GLC ownership and the kind of mainstream variant represented by the base sports spec GLC SUV model we've chosen to test here. This may be the entry-level variant, but it's still now a £40,000 car, so Mercedes can't afford to stint on the standard spec. But have they? Well, let's see. It's certainly better equipped than the cheapest version of this car was back at the model's original launch in 2015. The 18-inch wheels are a size larger, and you now get full LED high-performance headlights and power folding mirrors, plus an active parking assist with Parktronic system, and that's there to automatically steer you into tight spaces. Plus, as before, rear privacy glass, auto headlamps and wipers, tinted windows, roof rails, LED tail lamps, an alarm and a powered Easy Pack tailgate also make the team sheet. And of course, there's the Dynamic Select Vehicle Dynamic System, which allows you to tweak steering feedback, throttle response, gear change timings, and the feel of the Agility Control Comfort Suspension. The interior is better specified than base GLC models used to be too, with heated seats, a smarter 3-spoke multifunction Napa leather trimmed steering wheel, and hard disk navigation being now standard fit. And there's a much higher standard of infotainment. The previous base model's restricted 7-inch centre dash display has been replaced by a 10.25-inch touchscreen, and that's your access point for a vastly better MBUX. That's the Mercedes-Benz User Experience multimedia setup. It features Hey Mercedes voice control, a neat touchpad, a DAB tuner, lots of lovely informational graphics and Bluetooth, although not Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. We're disappointed to note that you only get that further up the range. Now, if your previous experience of a GLC was of an earlier model, you'll find the infotainment package fitted to this one to be really a great deal cleverer if you take the time to understand it. There's 3 years free use of a live traffic information system that helps you to avoid jams, 3 years of free map updates, and 3 years of a navigation services package that can tell you things like fuel prices at your destination, the number of available parking spaces, or the current weather. In addition, the 3D navigation package can be influenced by traffic feedback from the clever Car2X communication data. Now, this is a mobile phone supported exchange of information system which will see your GLC sending data on driving conditions back to a central hub, which then shares it with other Mercedes drivers. Now, that will mean that in a way that is almost magical, your GLC will know in advance about things like icy conditions and traffic jams. It's really clever. You also get in-car internet access to Mercedes-Benz online services via which you can create in your car a WLAN, that's a wireless local area network hotspot, and access Twitter, Facebook and internet radio. And you can download various integrated Mercedes apps for things like weather, Google local search with Street View and Panoramio. And aside from media connectivity, well, as before, in their standard form, the seats are trimmed in man-made Artico leather upholstery, with those at the front electrically powered and featuring 4-way electric lumbar support. There is also a keyless go starting function. There's Speedtronics cruise control, a reversing camera, thermatic automatic climate control, and an auto-dimming rear view mirror too. Practicalities, they're covered off by a stowage package that gives you a power release system for the rear seat backrests, a retaining net in the side of the lockable boot compartment floor, and also a collapsible luggage area box. Disappointingly though, given that this is a capable SUV, there's no spare wheel provided, only one of those irritating tyre sealant kits. We should also mention that as standard, the brand throws in all the benefits of its clever Mercedes Me Connect remote online services package, and that's included for the first 3 years of ownership, and it's available on subscription thereafter. Now, this allows you to connect to your car via desktop, tablet or smartphone through a downloadable app, and it includes an emergency call feature which will automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location in the event of an accident. Plus, there's breakdown recovery at the push of a button. Telediagnostics, those can automatically share maintenance issues with your dealer. There is a maintenance management feature. Now, that will remind you when a service is due and will then alert your dealer. And there's a parking time assist feature which works if you've parked up to alert you when your meter is just about to expire. For 3 years of ownership, you'll also get use of the brand's remote online services package. Now, this allows you to lock or unlock your car from wherever you are, and also to locate your vehicle's position if you've gone and forgotten where you parked it. Now, if you lend your GLC out to someone else, then a geofencing feature can be set to alert you if it leaves a preset geographical boundary. And if your car's ever stolen, then a vehicle tracker will show you its location anywhere in the world. So then, the entry-level sports spec includes plenty within the base price. We think though that most buyers will still want to go a little further and find the extra £1,750 to trade up to a mid-range AMG line trim model, which will be marked out by a diamond-style radiator grille and an AMG body styling kit with a diffuser look rear apron. Bear in mind though, at this level you have to have firmer sports suspension and larger 19-inch AMG wheels, which will give a noticeably firmer ride. Inside at this level there are AMG sport seats, part trimmed in suede-like Dynamica microfiber, plus you get a flat-bottom steering wheel, AMG floor mats, a black fabric roof liner, sports stainless steel pedals, and the base model's high-gloss black inlays are replaced by classier ones in grey open pore oak. Do you really require more than that in your GLC? Well, perhaps it depends who's paying. If that's not you, then you'll probably want to know about the pricier AMG Line Premium, AMG Line Premium Plus, and AMG Line Ultimate trim levels. Now you have to go for one of those if you want the real trim niceties that Mercedes offers in the GLC. Unfortunately, it's not possible to go for one of the lower trim levels and add in the things you want. A little disappointingly, you have to have one of those high-end models if you want two key inclusions, which were introduced as part of this revised model lineup: the 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and the smartphone integration system, which gives you that missing Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring feature. Still, at least if you can stump up to this level in the range, you will get a lot more technology. Things like multi-beam LED headlights, which can tailor their beam to suit the road you're on and the surrounding traffic movements, and also something that Mercedes calls augmented reality navigation. Now that's effectively a live camera feed of the road ahead, overlaid with house numbers and road names, direction arrows and other useful bits of information which will help you to find your way. Other AMG line premium inclusions run to 20-inch wheels, running boards, real leather upholstery, a wireless charging mat, a 64 colour ambient lighting setup and a mid-range 225-watt Mercedes sound system. To this tally, the AMG line Premium Plus variants add a Burmester surround sound system, a panoramic roof, keyless go, keyless entry, a memory package for the powered front seats and a smarter 5 twin-spoke design for the 20-inch wheels. Beyond that lies only the AMG line Ultimate model, which on top of all that gains air suspension, the Mercedes Air body control setup, which is still an unusual feature to find in the mid-sized SUV segment. What about the top V6 and V8 powered Mercedes AMG sports models, marked out by their vertically slatted grille and more menacing look? Well, you'd expect them to have their own bespoke specifications, and of course they do. The GLC 43 differs from the top AMG line trim mainstream models with small but significant changes to the body styling, the wheels and the look and feel of the cabin. But as a 43 model buyer, you'll probably want to upgrade at least as far as premium spec, which gives you the same premium level elements which feature in the standard range. Just to remind you, that means the 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, smartphone integration, multi-beam LED headlights, 20-inch wheels, running boards, augmented reality navigation, real leather upholstery, a wireless charging mat, 64 colour ambient lighting setup and the mid-range 225-watt Mercedes sound system. Or there's ritzier GLC 43 Premium Plus trim with the Burmester sound system, the panoramic roof, keyless go, keyless entry and the front seat memory package, plus 21-inch wheels and a 360-degree camera system. As for the V8 GLC 63 variants, well, being vastly more expensive, you'd expect them to have at least the premium level spec items that we've just run you through a couple of times, and that is indeed broadly what you get. The top 510 horsepower S version differs from the 476 HP standard V8 model in its use of 20-inch rather than 19-inch alloy wheels, plus the S variant is embellished with race-style AMG performance front seats, which feature Dynamica microfiber trimming, a flat-bottomed AMG performance steering wheel and also crystal grey seat belts. A 63S buyer also gets the AMG driver's package, which removes the car's usual 155 miles per hour speed limiter and raises the top speed to 174 miles an hour. And they'd have access to the AMG Track Pace app, which records lap times and track analysis for use on circuit days. You can spend quite a bit more on these Mercedes AMG models if you want to. Both the 43 and the 63 models can be embellished with a head-up display and Artico man-made leather-stitched finishing for the dashboard and the door belt lines. And you can do quite a bit extra on the 63 V8 derivatives if you want to. Both can be enhanced with an AMG exterior carbon fibre package, which adds that finishing to the mirror housings and to the front spoiler lip. And any 63 luxury buyer can have an AMG night package, which coats many of the exterior elements in high gloss black for a meaner look. The two 63 series models can have carbon fibre interior trim inlays added too. The base 63 variant can be upgraded with larger 20 or 21-inch wheels and race-style AMG performance seats. Plus, paying extra for the AMG driver's package will raise the 476 HP version's top speed to 167 miles an hour. As for the top 63S, well, that can be enhanced with larger 22-inch wheels and an AMG high-performance composite braking system. But the Mercedes-AMG derivatives aren't really our focus here today, so let's switch the emphasis back to the standard range variants like this one and turn to consider the options that you might want to add into a mainstream GLC model. As we alluded to earlier, there aren't actually many extras available. You will need to make a decision on paintwork, of course, and that's one that'll almost certainly see you paying your Mercedes dealer extra for your choice of colour, since only one shade comes as standard, and that's solid polar white. There are various optional metallic or designo metallic paint finishes. Here we've got obsidian black metallic. If you're looking at practical stuff, well, there is an extendable tow bar available, of course. We've got that here, and basic roof carrier bars, which of course you'll need if you want a roof box or the available bicycle rack, which can take 2 cycles. For the cargo area, you might want to consider the shallow boot tub, which is made from impact resistant non-split polypropylene and will protect the boot floor from messy loads. Enough with that, let's switch to safety. Because this X253 series first generation GLC model isn't one of Mercedes' most recent designs, it can't feature the company's most cutting edge autonomous driving technology. But there is still plenty of camera driven safety kit for dealers to talk about. As usual, the key feature is autonomous braking, and that's Mercedes' Collision Prevention Assist Plus package. Now that will warn the driver of an impending collision, and it will also brake automatically if there's no response. Now, testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents, and it will decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. And there's more. Attention Assist will monitor your driving reactions for drowsiness. There is also an active bonnet which protects pedestrians, Neck Pro anti-whiplash head restraints, and also the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus there's a knee bag for the driver. As you expect, all the usual electronic aids for traction, braking and stability control are included too. In addition, there's an adaptive braking system which flashes the brake lights in emergency stops, and it keeps the discs dry in wet weather. Plus tyre pressure monitoring and a hill holder function which will stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. All the more proactive camera-driven safety stuff lies within the optional driving assistance package, which you'll be able to specify only if you've avoided entry-level sport trim. Now, if you qualify based on that criteria and you feel like spending a further £1,700 on your GLC, you'll find the driving assistance pack to be full of active designated features that don't merely warn you of danger, but also lightly alter the steering to help you to take avoiding action away from the hazard. There is also a mild level of autonomous driving functionality, although not as much as is available on the brand's more recently developed models. The most significant of the pack's features in that regard is Distronic Plus with steering assist and stop and go pilot. Now this automatically maintains a safe distance to the vehicle in front. It prevents unintentional drifting out of lane, and in case of tailbacks it can bring you to a stop, and then it can automatically start you off again. And it combines with active lane keeping assist. Now that uses one-sided braking intervention to help to maneuver the car back to where it ought to be on the highway. Other driving assistance package features include active blind spot assist, which stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake when you're on the move. There's also a pre-safe brake feature. Now that warns the driver if it detects that a rear end collision is imminent, and if there's no reaction, it can take autonomous action to reduce the speed, even to the extent of full brake application. And there's what Mercedes calls BAS Plus with cross traffic assist, and that's a brake assist system that can lower the risk of rear-end collisions and also support the driver during emergency braking by providing additional brake pressure. It also works at junctions and roundabouts to avoid possible collisions from the side. All of which leaves us impressed by just how far you can go to look after yourself these days in a car of this sort, and especially in this one. The Federal Office of Statistics reckons that the driver of a Mercedes is 9.6% less likely to have an accident than the driver of a car of any other brand. Looking at what's on offer here, you can begin to see why. We can quite believe that the next generation version of this car will be an efficiency class leader. After all, engine-wise, this GLC now sits at the cutting edge. Mainstream variants of this revised model get the latest in diesel technology, and petrol power in a mainstream GLC is now at last a credible option thanks to the adoption of mild hybrid 48-volt EQ boost engineering. Plus, there's a super efficient plug-in proposition, and Mercedes is well advanced also with its hydrogen fuel cell tech, although that can't yet be offered here because of the current lack of a proper fueling infrastructure. Unfortunately, in this first generation X253 series GLC, all this technical effort remains slightly hobbled by the issue of vehicle weight. Back in 2015, when this car was first launched, the adoption of part aluminium architecture made it one of the lighter models in the class, but the game really has moved on since then. The strongest selling GLC 220D variant, and that's the car we're trying here, tips the scale as at 1,835 kilos. To give you some class perspective, that is 65 kilos, or to put it another way, the weight of an average adult, heavier than a competing Audi Q5 40 TDI Quattro, and it's up to 45 kilos heavier than this car's other arch rival, the BMW X3 xDrive 20D. Given this relatively weighty shortfall, it says a lot for the merits of this Mercedes model's all-new OM654 Series 2-litre diesel, a replacement for the previous rumbly old OM651 Series 2.1-litre unit that a GLC 220D produces such a strong set of efficiency readings. These would be more clearly class leading if this car were to be a little lighter on the scales. To be fair, you shouldn't really be disappointed with what this car can already deliver once you've perused the stats and you've compared them to those of obvious rivals. Let's give you some figures, all of which will be based around a version with the smallest available wheels. For reference, the alternative coupe body shapes readings are only fractionally different, and that's despite the fact that some versions of that model are up to 30 kilos heavier due to extra body strengthening. 194 HP GLC SUV 220D variant manages up to 47.9 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle and up to 137 grams per kilometre of any DC rated CO2. For company car tax, that equates to a benefit in kind taxation rate of 31%. These figures are very similar to those you get from a competing BMW X3 xDrive 20D, which manages 45.6 mpg and 133 grams per kilometre. However, they are significantly better than an Audi Q5 40 TDI Quattro rated at 39.2 mpg and 144 grams per kilometre. You might be interested to know that the JLR contenders in this class, equivalent versions of the Range Rover Evoque, the Land Rover Discovery Sport and the Jaguar F-Pace, are even further away from this GLC's efficiency standard. As you'd expect, this 2-litre diesel engine conforms to the latest super stringent Euro 6D RDE standard. Obviously, if you opt for it in its uprated 245 HP state of tune that features in the GLC 300D variant, then your returns will reflect the fact, falling to 44.1 mpg and 157 grams per kilometre. If you want to get a feeling for the premium required in running a GLC over a directly equivalent C-Class estate, then let's tell you that the readings of a C300D 4MATIC are rated at 53.3 mpg and 141 grams per kilometre, which is what a 110 kilo weight saving translates into. What about petrol power? Well, with the pre-facelifted version of this SUV, green pump options were limited to the road-burning Mercedes-AMG models. But with the introduction of its electrified EQ Boost technology, Mercedes has felt confident enough to offer GLC buyers a mainstream petrol variant, the GLC 300. Here, a 2-litre engine has been optimised for efficiency with enhancements like twin-scroll turbocharging, that's for greater torque at modest rev speeds, and cylinder bores pared back at their bases to reduce friction while preserving a tight seal. Building on this efficient starting point, this unit uses mild hybrid engineering, a belt-driven starter generator running off a 48-volt electrical system to supposedly combine eager performance with surprising levels of cleanliness and frugality. That's what Mercedes hoped for anyway. This power plant's electrical element is certainly seamlessly integrated, cutting in and shutting down the engine completely at cruising speeds, which will often see you burning absolutely no fuel at all. Plus, the EQ Boost technology allows for a greater level of kinetic energy regeneration, something that a GLC 300 driver can monitor on the move via an EQ Boost power stroke charge meter in the instrument cluster. This energy can also be used to power the engine start-stop system when the car is rolling to a halt. To be honest, we would have expected the result of all this cleverness to yield a little more in terms of real-world fuel and CO2 readings than it actually does. A GLC 300 officially returns up to 34.4 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle and up to 166 grams per kilometre of CO2. For company car tax, that equates to a benefit in kind taxation rating of 37%. If you want to make a much bigger dent in fuel and CO2 figures than mere mild hybrid technology can provide, and you have a plumper budget for ownership, then your Mercedes dealer will point you in the direction of the plug-in version of this SUV, the petrol-powered GLC 300e. Now here, an electric motor powered by a 13.5 kilowatt-hour battery is capable of running the car on electricity alone for up to 27 WLTP rated miles before a 2-litre combustion engine chimes in. That plug-in variant can be charged from 10 to 100% in an hour and a half with a 7.4 kilowatt charger, or in 5 hours from a standard 3-pin UK socket. Based on the notoriously unrealistic WLTP cycle figures produced for plug-in hybrids, the petrol GLC 300e is supposed to be able to achieve over 128.4 mpg on the combined cycle and emit up to as little as 51 grams per kilometre of CO2. Of course, you won't get anything like that in normal use, but we could see a realistic return of around 60 to 70 mpg being regularly achievable from a GLC 300e, which is in itself pretty impressive. Let's move to the opposite end of the efficiency spectrum though and give you the running cost figures for the high performance V6 and V8 petrol powered GLC 43 and GLC 63 high performance Mercedes-AMG models. The V6 GLC 43 4MATIC manages up to 27.7 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle and up to 234 grams per kilometre of NEDC rated CO2. Now that isn't actually too bad given its performance capability. You will need deep pockets though to run the V8 GLC 63, which manages up to 22.2 mpg. You will need deeper pockets though if you want to run the V8 GLC 63, which manages up to 22.2 mpg and up to 278 grams per kilometre in 476 HP form, or alternatively 22.1 mpg and 283 grams per kilometre as a 510 horsepower 63S. Whatever GLC variant you decide on, you'll need to do your part in terms of overall efficiency, perhaps by setting up the Dynamic Select drive mode controller more frequently in its most frugal eco mode, and that disconnects the engine as part of a gliding function which is activated at cruising speeds. With the EQ Boost petrol unit, this gliding feature also reduces the output of the seat heating and the air conditioning to further save energy. On all GLC variants, there's also an eco indicator that you can select to show in the instrument binnacle that'll help you drive more economically. As you'd expect in this day and age, all GLC models models feature an eco start-stop function that'll cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. And there is a consumption section in the vehicle part of the MBUX center screen that will give you graphical evidence of your success or otherwise in achieving maximum efficiency. What else? Well, you get a comprehensive 3-year warranty that has no mileage restriction. Rival BMW and Audi warranties restrict you to 60,000 miles, and this package is built on by Mercedes Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have your car serviced at a Mercedes main dealer. And it's also worth knowing that your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check by going for the optional service care package. Now that takes care of routine maintenance and spreads the cost of regular servicing. It guarantees the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services, and it will cover the cost of all the recommended service items. I'm talking about things like brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. For reference, servicing is usually required every 15,500 miles or every year, whichever comes first. And as usual with Mercedes models, there is an Assist Plus dashboard service indicator which monitors engine use and will tell you exactly when a garage visit is due. You can find this in the service menu on the instrument cluster screen, and that's a menu that also includes an engine oil indicator, a tyre pressure readout, and on the diesel models, a screen for the AdBlue additive, which needs to be topped up as part of regular servicing. Insurance groupings for this SUV are pretty much par for the class. A base GLC 220D diesel is rated Group 31 to 32, and a GLC 300D diesel is Group 36 to 38. For the GLC 300 mild hybrid petrol version, it's groups 35 to 38. For the V6 GLC 43, you're looking at groups 40 to 41. And for the top V8 GLC 63, it's group 45 for the 476 HP version, or group 47 for the top 63S. If, on the other hand, you're looking at the alternative coupe version of this GLC, then think in terms of a group level up from the ratings that we've just given you. As for residuals, well, to give you an idea, after 3 years and 36,000 miles, independent experts reckon that a base GLC 220D SUV sport variant, like the one we're trying here, will be worth 46.4% of its original value, which of course is very class competitive. Image is everything when it comes to premium mid-sized SUVs, and on that basis, this improved GLC is a very desirable package. In terms of styling, technology and efficiency, it borrows hugely from other Mercedes models to very good effect. Plus, options like air suspension offer the kind of luxury that used to be limited to much larger luxury SUVs, enabling this car to cross ravines 1 minute and carve through a set of bends at speed the next. The Achilles heel of the original version of this car, its rumbly old 2.1 litre diesel engine, has been impressively dispatched. The replacement 2 litre unit is now difficult to better if you're looking for a refined black pump fueled option in this class. And for the increasing number of business buyers who aren't, the introduction of mild hybrid tech makes petrol power a more credible option. There's impressive engineering elsewhere in the range too. Highlights include plug-in technology, the V8 variants, and the option of air suspension. One day we might even get the hydrogen fuel cell version in our market too. In short, if you care what lies beneath the bonnet and you're browsing in this sector, the GLC really does remain a very difficult car to ignore. There's a combination here of frugality, space and comfort that rivals will find very hard to beat. Yes, some potential customers may feel that there are more dynamic choices they could make in this segment, but these people won't be able to leave a Mercedes showroom before being directed over towards the sleeker coupe version of this car, which could very well make them think again. Most, though, will value the all-round practicality of this standard model. Of course, this car's two closest arch rivals, the BMW X3 and the Audi Q5, have strong followings. And beyond those cars, there are trendier-looking options, a Range Rover Evoque or an Alfa Romeo Stelvio, for example. Others may want the 7-seat capacity of a comparable Land Rover Discovery Sport. As an all-rounder though, combining many of the qualities that you'll find in all those cars, the GLC remains a tempting package. A segment benchmark? You'd have to say so.